All right, before I get into this, can we just appreciate for 1 second Koji Mori and the entire staff of Studio Gaga for continuing Kentaro Miura's legacy and the greatest story ever told, in my humble opinion. These men put in a ton of hard work, and you know that with the release of these chapters right now, they are in a very nerve-wracking position because how fans respond to these two chapters is going to be something very important moving forward. Now, I think because of the release of the announcement and everything, that we are in the best case scenario for a Berserk continuation. So if anybody does not want to read this continuation or does not like this continuation because it is not specifically Kentaro Miura at the pen, I understand that and I respect that. However, I also think that we should give a ton of credit and respect to the creators and for them continuing Kentaro Miura's legacy, doing what Miura himself would have wanted them to do, and it being in the best hands possible with his best friend for 30 years and an accomplished manga writer himself, Koji Mori, and the entire art staff. So I just want to throw a great shout out to these guys for doing an amazing job with the continuation and just having the sheer tenacity and balls to continue this. It has to be an extremely daunting task that I am sure none of them take lightly. So with that out of the way, I was not expecting these chapters today. I was expecting these to drop sometime tomorrow because Japan is, hours and hours ahead of us. So I assumed that it would come out on Thursday here, that there would be a translation. But the hype is real, and we've had people online do a translation. And luckily, these two chapters in particular have a ton of action and movement in them, and there is very, very little dialogue. So not even a whole lot to translate, which probably also allowed it to come out much faster. Not a lot of crazy lore explanation or deep diving into anything. So fantastic job, guys. Thank you a lot for translating it. I'm sure you guys, if you looked hard enough on the internet, you'll be able to find it. But obviously this entire video is going to be completely filled with spoilers and my thoughts and theories about what is happening. So with that all out of the way, let's get going. Chapter 365 is extremely short, but very, very telling. Number one, it shows a lot of the other characters on Elfhelm, and I like this because, number one, it's showcasing the art style. I think that was one thing that was probably put into consideration when creating this chapter, because it's going to be known by fans that this is going to be the studio themselves doing the artwork. So the fact that we get to see Puck, we get to see Isma's mom, it's been a long time, and a bunch of other of the creatures on Elfhelm, it sort of helps us reestablish this world within this art style. So I like that from the get-go. I like seeing Puck right away because it takes me back to the very beginning of the manga, feels very nostalgic. We then cut back to just a few seconds before the last chapter left off. We see Casca sensing something and going outside, Shirake being curious, and as she opens the door, in all of his naked femboy glory, there is Griffith looking as beautiful and elegant as ever, with the panel cutting off conveniently right before it gets to his dong. How would that be for an introduction of a new Berserk chapter with new artist? We just see Griffith's dick. Anyway, Casca's brand begins to bleed, obviously, because she is near a God Hand member, and she starts to have more of the PTSD flashbacks of everything that happened to her, not just when she was of sound mind, but also events that happened to her while she was in her Elaine state, which I found interesting. Now, I assumed Casca would probably do this, and probably seeing the visions of Griffith would cause whatever missing memories are gone to flood back into her mind. We don't see any shots of the specific event that broke her mind, but we do see a shot of the Eclipse Hand. But other than that, there is no dialogue from Casca either out loud or within her mind, so we're not exactly sure how much she remembers here, but it does definitely seem like this is such an excruciating amount of pain that she's not even able to comprehend what's happening in front of her. Now, I do really like this page with Shirake noticing the eyes of Griffith. If you guys ever noticed, ever since Griffith came back as a God Hand when he was incarnated, his pupils have always been drawn sort of reptilian. I always like that effect to it. Also, I think this is really important to remember that Shirake was the only one who kind of knew what Griffith was this entire time. In fact, it wasn't until in canon in Berserk, only maybe a dozen chapters ago, that Guts actually sat down and told the people at Elfhelm the story of Griffith. It was mostly told off screen, but that was the first time that most of our main characters even knew who Griffith was. Shirake was the only one for the longest time that knew he was this creature of darkness that got his power from the abyss, that he was whatever these god hand creatures are. She learned all this from Flora, but this is the first time that she's seen him face to face, that she's been firsthand with him, seeing him here. And I love that it focuses on her reaction and her terror, because if there is any character besides maybe Gedfring or some of the other, Elfhelm alumni, if there is any one of the main cast besides Guts and Casca that understand the gravity of this situation, it would be Shirake. So I like that they showed that. And then that chapter ends pretty much with what you would expect. Guts flies into a rage and starts to go to attack Griffith, which is exactly what we all thought would happen. If this was the only chapter released today, this would have been quite the case of blue balls. It still would have been great to get a Berserk chapter, don't get me wrong, but thank God we did get one more. And it's in this chapter, 366, where the really interesting stuff starts to happen. There is more going on here than you would think. First of all, yes, Guts does go to attack Griffith with the Dragon Slayer, but there's a couple of really weird things to take note of. Number one, the Berserker armor is not taking a hold of Guts. He is successfully holding it back and not allowing it to take hold. This is showing extreme restraint from Guts, and perhaps maybe even a bit of fear of him not wanting the Berserker armor to take hold, in just the very fact as he saw what happened to Skull Knight just a few chapters ago within his backstory, and how the rage took hold so hard that, he eventually died while wearing the armor because he just fought until the bitter end. So it could be, even though there's no dialogue to suggest it, it could be that Guts is a little bit more fearful now of the Berserker armor than he was before, even though he's been told that there are ways to master it moving forward, but obviously not enough time to figure that out now. Griffith is right in front of him. The other very strange thing that is happening here is it's looking like Guts is connecting with the sword and slicing right through Griffith, and yet Griffith receives no damage whatsoever. There are several pages of Guts swinging, looking like the mark is going right through his body, right through his head, and swinging over and over again, and yet he's not making contact. And Griffith isn't retaliating. He doesn't even really seem to be dodging. So this is really concerning because, number one, now there have been instances where Griffith has avoided contact with weapons, seeing as though he's outside the reason of the mortal world and all of that, but Guts' Dragon Slayer has also been shown that it can harm on an astral and physical level. So if there is any weapon that should be able to hit him, it should be Guts's, right? Well, look, I don't want to go into my deep Ryan theories about everything that's going to happen in Berserk, but all I have been saying, and I've said this in multiple videos, you can quote me if you guys want to, but I believe that Guts' Dragon Slayer sword is going to be the next Baelot sword, the next type of sword that Skull Knight has. And with the capability of both those swords combined, then maybe there's an alternate outcome of what's happening here. But that's a story for another time. If it happens, I just want you guys to quote me. So when it does, you guys can all say, Ryan said this. And I'll be like, yes, I did. Now, the other thing that's going on is Shirake entering the astral realm here, as she usually does to help restrain Guts and to help him kind of keep his clear conscience, keep his ego while he's using the Berserker armor. But while she's doing this, she sees the image of Griffith, or I guess what would be Griffith's astral form, which is sort of similar to how she's been in this situation before, and the Moonlight Boy has been able to sort of use its astral form to also calm Guts down and all of that. So it could be very similar, since they share the same body, that there is this sort of similarity within them being in the astral world together and being able to interact with Guts' astral form, Shirake's astral form, and all that. Farnese shows up, though, which I can't remember where Farnese was, in relation to where everyone was standing, but she shows up already in her astral form, and she doesn't really explain how. Now, the translation says, it's not important right now, I'll tell you later, that sort of thing. But it is very strange that she would already be within this form. Maybe she already thought that Shirake would be at Guts' side here, so she wanted to come help out as well in that form. I'm not really sure. But the translation of Griffith in this astral dimension calls it like a maelstrom, a force that draws in and swallows everything around it, which is really unique when you remember when Griffith gained his power as a god hand. Well, it was from the omitted chapter, I suppose, but he basically swallowed up all of this negative emotion and turmoil and darkness and broken dreams and like all of the Band of the Hawk, basically kind of flowing into him and everything like that. You could sort of look at it like he is this maelstrom or this whirlpool that sucks up everything into it, just making himself more powerful. You can even see that with the way that people look up to him and believe in him and idolize him and worship him. It's like he's absorbing everybody's feelings and emotions to just make himself more powerful. Symbolically anyways. I don't mean that literally in the story, though that would be interesting. And then we get the moment, you guys. The moment. Puck flying around in the air. He senses something. He sees something on the moonbeams that can travel across the planet. He's like, what is that? Feels the energy. Comes down. Then we see the paw. Then we get our money shot. The final double-page spread of Chapter 366. Everybody just say it with me. Motherfucking Zodd! Zodd is here! Oh, yes. Yes, motherfucking Zodd is here. Now, does he look a little bit funky? Yeah, maybe. But you know what? I think it'll only get better with time. Also, this means many, many things, you guys. Okay, first of all, this might confirm that Zodd was, in fact, watching over the Moonlight Boy the many times it was kind of theorized, where we kind of saw that weird image in the distance that could have been Zodd. It also allows me to believe that Zodd might only be the first of many to arrive on the island. He may have sensed Griffith's energy, came here right away, and the other Apostle Boys could be on the way right behind him. And also, very important to note that since everyone on Elfhelm seemed to be able to sense Griffith's energy while he was there and sense the darkness, do not forget that Skull Knight is still on this island, and I am certain that he also sensed that. And I am certain, just like I've always said, that Skull Knight is going to show up here. We might get a Guts and Skull Knight versus Zodd moment. We might get a Guts, Skull Knight versus Zodd and Griffith moment. We might get the death of one of these characters. We might see the end of Zodd. We might see the end of Skull Knight by the time the Elfhelm chapters wrap up. I would not be surprised either way. What I am comfortable saying is that our time of peace is over. Many people were complaining about some of the more recent Berserk chapters, and when I say recent, I mean like within the last 3 or 4 years, that there wasn't action going on, it was too tame, the characters were just hanging out on the island, there was a bunch of lowly witches, everyone seem to want more, right? And granted, when you're used to only getting about 3 chapters a year, obviously you're going to be wanting a little bit more in those chapters, but I think it was very important to see the peace and be able to see the positive and the good times that these characters had. That for just a little while, they could let their guard down, rest, be happy with one another, and find some semblance of tranquility on Elfhelm here. Because we knew it wouldn't last. It was just a matter of when. And I don't believe for a second that Elfhelm is going to remain. I have said from the get-go that Elfhelm will burst into flames. I still believe that. I think the rest of Griffith's people are on the way. I think Sonya's even going to show up and then have a little back and forth with Shirake. Now, we don't know where the other boys are either. Serpico has not showed up yet. Roderick has not showed up yet. Please, just give me some more Roderick, bro. I need my boy Roderick back. But the fact of the matter is there are actually so many characters centered in one location. This is going to be quite the task to actually create this scene that is building up with all of these characters all in one location. I can't imagine that there won't be character deaths. I can't imagine that Elfhelm is going to remain. And I think that we're going to get a major death as well. Possibly within Zodd, Skull Knight, or one of the main cast in Guts' group. I'm not sure. Now, if you're asking me what I think will happen next, same thing I've said was going to happen. I still have the same theories. I still believe that Griffith is going to take Casca with him because he doesn't want to have this weakness of his every time turning into the Moonlight Boy, going back to Casca. It's a pain in the ass. He's going to bring her back to Falconia. Whether or not our main characters follow him or try to follow him, yet to be seen. Like I said, I also think the Dragon Slayer will become the next Baelot sword, but I guess that would require Skull Knight to remain alive in order to forge it, perhaps. And we might see a separation of the group, too. My main question is still, what is the ramifications of the time skip? Remember, before they entered Elfhelm, Isma's mom said, hey, be careful about how long you stay in there because time moves differently. in magical realms than it does in the outside physical world. But what exactly is that time scale? How long have our characters been here? That is something I'm really curious to figure out. And inevitably somebody will ask, when are the next chapters coming out? And my answer is, I don't know yet. Maybe it wasn't in the translation that I read. Maybe we'll get an update pretty soon. I'm sure that we will. Trust me, when there is a release date, I'll let you guys know. You guys will let me know. It's a good back and forth. Other than that, guys, please tell me what you thought of chapters 365 and 366. There's a lot to discuss. Even though the chapters read quick, there's a ton to discuss in the story, and there's also a ton to discuss when it comes to the creation of these chapters and how you feel about the art, how you feel about the direction that the story is going. There's a lot there, and I'm sure that there will be a lot of conflicting opinions about it too. But anyways, guys, please leave all your thoughts, comments, theories down below in the comments. I really appreciate it. Thank you all for the support of this channel and on these videos. Please give the channel a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, because it does really help me out more than you think. Subscribe if you want to stick around and see more videos. If this is your first time here, I have like hundreds of Berserk videos you guys can check out if you want to. And if you want to support the channel on that deeper level and keep the channel going, I do have a link for my Patreon down below. Even as low as $1 a month is extremely helpful and keeps me afloat. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.